What's up, everybody? My name is Graham Elwood. We're going to get into some government secrets here. You're probably watching this on my channel, the Political Vigilante. Thank you for everybody watching on the CIA Tube, Facebook, rockfin.com, and of course, TikTok. Hello, TikTokers. This might be confusing for you because I'm not doing that guy screaming about mandates. But yeah, if you are watching on TikTok and like what's going on, go on over to youtube.com/Graham Elwood and you can watch the whole thing with Lee Camp. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a fantastic show. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's bring him on. Host of Redacted tonight and Moment of Clarity and 15 other podcasts. Lee Camp.
Hello, TikTokers. You may not know what the fuck's going on right now. Hope you're enjoying it.
I like to confuse my audience, Lee. I like to make them...
Also, I feel like the TikTokers are like, why is he not dancing with, EDM music behind him and wearing a banana hammock? I don't understand.
We can make that happen, Lee. It's not like out of the question if that's what we need to do.
If we get 30 super chat donations, then there will be a banana hammock orgy.
Banana hammock orgy, folks, coming soon.
How you doing?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing?
Not bad. Not bad. Washington, D.C. has dropped away from the, want to chop off your own fucking limbs to not be sweltering kind of weather. So that's good.
I really had no idea where you were going with chopping off limbs. I was like, what is Lee talking about?
I feel like as much body heat as you can get away from you if you just chop your limbs off.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was some sort of cannibal uprising in DC that I wasn't aware of, but it's just heat.
Yeah, heat and humidity. It's finally become something resembling fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What was I going to tell you? Something really exciting. God, it was fun. This is our 60th episode, episode 60. This is a big deal.
I don't know if I trust you anymore on that front.
You'd be quite proud of me, Lee. I made a point of checking what number it was, going to the actual Google Doc that has all of the operation, all of the subjects we went into, because I didn't want to repeat.
Wow. You opened a Google Doc.
Yes, and I did it about an hour before we went live, just to be as prepared as always. So
I'll take it. I'll take it.
When we get into my subject, it very well should be said what you just put in an email, and I will let you know that your guess was correct.
Well, you did it out of love. You wanted to bring a Halloween episode to the fans of government secrets. And so Graham just told me that his topic had to do with vampires and the CIA. And I was like, let me guess. You Googled vampires and the CIA.
I literally just Googled CIA and then V. And I put vampires and I was like, what is that? I was actually looking, I first put in CIA in the Philippines and I was reading some interesting stuff about the Philippines and how the CIA has done a bunch of awful stuff, which we'll get into. And then part of their psyops in the Philippines have been vampires. It's going to be excitingly. I was
wondering if there were some failed Google searches at first, like CIA and zombies, CIA and Babadooks. I didn't. And this was like the third or fourth attempt.
CIA Frankenstein, CIA Bride of Frankenstein. Yeah, I did all of those.
CIA Frankenstein just brought up a photo of Gina Haspel, so you were like, that's not it.
Go to leecamp.com, ladies and gentlemen, for those kind of hot, fresh comedy jokes that we folks, you can support our show at liberapay.com/government secrets. So many of you have been supporting. It's been exciting. The beer pay is a little confusing, and when they pay us out and how. I just get random payments from them and weird amounts. I don't know what they are, but I will put those all together and take care of that. So do we want to do mine first, since let's
stick with the holiday theme, the Halloween theme. That's absolutely.
So since it's government secrets, we just have to say government secrets.
I don't know. I think that was more Ethel Merman. I think that was.
There's no government secrets like our government secrets, like no government secrets I know. Everything about it is appealing. The CIA is ruining the world.
This could be the new theme. Is every week Graham has to cram CIA secrets into lyrics of some different song each week.
Well, at the live show, for those of you, if you were not at the live show, you missed out on the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's a wonderful day for a coup today. CIA operation. It was beautiful.
Yeah, YouTube looks out for those song lyrics, and they'll fuck you if you sing 3 notes of Mr. Rogers.
They probably are on high alert for Ethel Merman parodies. I'm pretty sure that they're looking
absolutely. Her, the estate will they'll get you.
Because I'm sure if somebody searches, just put, I'm sure Ethel Merman was tied to the CIA in some way or form. I'm just like, we did one on Julia Child was in the CIA.
We did one on Julia Child CIA connections.
So I'm sure Ethel Merman is in deep cover. So this is Government Secrets first segment, Halloween theme. Pew 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 pew. Pew. Ooh. So there we go. We just did
See, you're like a, I don't know, a lighter, more loving personality in Halloween. I feel like if someone said to me, like, do Halloween sounds, I'd be like, ah! Ah! Oh God, my jugular vein is that would be my Halloween. Yours is like, ooh.
Mine are like radio commercial Halloween sounds, like it's time for fall savings at Big O Tires. 20% off on rotations or something.
When better to get a mattress than now? You're like, why are you saying that in that tone? That tone doesn't mean anything with mattresses.
Oh, replace your mattress every 5 to 10 years.
Or else a ghost might give you some sort of infection or bed bugs.
Your back will be haunted.
Now you're getting pretty close to what they actually do. Like
these are I'm doing these. This is actual radio copy.
Legit, yeah.
Is there anything dumber than a radio ad?
No, and the attempts to cram in some various holiday is always really, really oppressive.
My favorite thing, I have a buddy of mine, and we like talking sports, and whenever one of us is watching a sports one,
talking. What are the talking sports? Like there's one where you go really fast, one where you jump hurdles while you do it.
Yes, the talking sports. We like talking about actual sporting events. Okay. And our favorite thing to text each other is whenever we hear like a local sport themed, like it's, you'll never strike out with Toyota of the Chicagoland, your greater Chicago Toyota area. Like those.
And when they get really out there with the puns, they're like, these deals aren't going to land in the courts for much longer. You're like, what? That doesn't mean anything. You're just
barely makes sense. Like, oh, get a hat trick of savings whenever you go to the Washington Capitals, home of new flooring. Like, oh, all right, there's the flooring deal. I could do those all day. I could do those all. I love those all day. But lastly, let us go to what the CIA has done. So we got to go. The CIA used, before we get into the specifics of the vampires in the Philippines that the CIA used, we need to give a little backdrop on the CIA, which was formed in 1947. But OSS started.
Footnote for the regular listeners: Truman both signed the CIA into creation and then wrote an op-ed after Kennedy's assassination, saying the CIA had gotten out of control.
Yeah, yes, the Truman. Thank you. When he was like, "Whoops, that was a bad idea. Here's an op-ed piece. It's bad we killed Kennedy." So here's the kind of U.S.'s history with the Philippines, right? But just to give a little backstory. The Philippines was a republic of Spain. They got away from Spain, I believe, in the late 1800s. And the U.S. decided to,
before being a republic of Spain, I think they were an island of regular indigenous people who did not associate with Spain.
Right. Yeah.
There was a time before.
There was definitely a time before the Europeans came in and ruined most of the planet. Yes, that's correct. But in 1898, the Philippines became a colony of the United States after the territory was relinquished by the Spanish following the American victory of the Spanish-American War.
Can you imagine? There must have been like 3 days where they were like, "We did it! We threw off our Spanish captors!" And then they hear Yankee Doodle Dandy playing on the horizon. Oh, shit.
Oh, no. These guys are the worst. So in World War II, between 1942 and 1945, Japan conquered the Philippines, and they were really brutal to the Philippines. They disrespected them. They, did awful stuff to them. So, and when MacArthur left, that's that famous there, and General MacArthur said, "I shall return," right? So during that time, there was the Hukbala Hop Rebellion, which was just shortened to Huck Rebellion. And the Huck resistance were basically using guerrilla war tactics. And it was formed in order to fend off the Japanese during the occupation. There's a long Filipino name for it that literally stand for like the army against the Japanese, basically what it was. So of course,
I appreciate you not trying to pronounce it.
Nobody needs to hear that.
Everyone appreciates it.
Everyone really, it's better for me to do a sport themed radio commercial than that. Don't settle for a field goal with an average air conditioning unit. Go for the touchdown with your local Baltimore area refrigeration units. So
someone's just going to clip that out and legit just play that in their area. They'll be like, "This is perfect. We were trying to sell refrigeration units.
This is great. It's exactly what we want. We're the touchdown. The other companies are settling for the field goal. I love this guy." So they were the Hucks basically were communists, and like we've had this theme before, right?
And communism will play a role in our next segment as well.
Oh, sweet. So we backed the communists in World War II. Loved the communists when they were fighting fascists.
Right. Fighting the Japanese.
Fighting the Japanese or the Germans or anybody else. The Italians, we had no problem with it.
I'm sure we gave them all kinds of wonderful promises too. Like if you win this, we will give you your freedom and
oh God. That's our favorite thing to do. Like an American broken promise is you haven't lived till you've had an American broken promise. I
would like to meet these people that still to this day, when the Americans show up and go, "We'll give you everything you want." He's speaking a lot of truth there, I think. I think they're going to give us everything we want.
It really feels like this time it's different.
This time it's different. This time he means it.
It's like that song that came out in the 90s. I know I should say no, but it's kind of hard when I'm ready to go. Right? That song.
It's kind of hard when she's giving me a hand job.
Yeah. I'm just a sucker with no self-esteem. That's everyone who falls for the Americans. So here's what happened. We started then after World War II putting military bases all over the Philippines, and it was actually and still could be today a CIA hub for Southeast Asia is in Manila. We have a headquarters there right now.
It's funny. I mentioned Gina Haspel. I think she might have been the head of torturing people in the Philippines.
Oh, awesome.
I might have the wrong country, but anyway.
Well, we know thanks to John Kiriakou, she loved flying around to CIA black sites and watching people get tortured. She, quote, got off on it, quote. So that was
good people, just good people all around.
Solid. It's good that we put a Karen in charge of the CIA. So what happened then is then this Huck organization after World War II started to kind of gain steam, and they were starting a kind of a rebellion against the government that was put in there by the United States. Now, we should also make it clear that the CIA operated in support of the pro-American for big business, which again, we've heard this story before. These big corporations wanted a government that was going to be favorable to them. Obviously, the communists were not. So the CIA came in and the operated in support and for big businesses such as Coca-Cola,
just to add real quick here, that is the key thing that America and other countries hated about communism was not the way, Stalin made it state communism and killed a bunch of people through starvation and things like that. That wasn't really what upset them. What upset them was the idea, the ideological concept of workers having a bunch of power. And, what upset them was more that idea than they didn't give a fuck if people died of famine or something like that. So it's that is what about communism really drove the capitalists nuts is the concept of workers having more power.
Well, not only workers having more power, but a communist system, if it's actually implemented correctly, there's no 1%. There's no oligarchs in that system. Everybody is getting, and they're that's the thing I think. I mean, if they could somehow let workers own a piece of the pie, but still be billionaires, they might agree to it, but there's no way, because the way capitalism is structured, you have to exploit labor. You need to have poverty in order to have extreme wealth. It's just
right. And they love to point to Stalinism and say, oh, well, that is communism. And look how horrible it was. And it's no, that was Stalinism. That was not communism. But,
right. He was just a totalitarian guy. That under a communist system that then abused his power, because he was one guy in charge. It wasn't a group of people. So they had all this crony capitalism and oligarchy in the Philippines, and the CIA used its resources to advance the interests of American corporations such as Ford, Nike, and Coca-Cola. Boy, that's what our flag should just have on it, is those logos.
Yeah, and there's some people sell those flags with the American flag with all the brands on them. Yeah,
I've seen those. The CIA in the United States have consistently played a role in politically and economic life of the Philippines. So I want to get into when this rebellion on August 24th, 1948, the CIA received a message from Filipino Secretary of Defense. The message detailed a peace offering from the Hucks to the Filipino government. The demands included an American expulsion. So the Hucks were fighting after World War II, were fighting with the Filipino government. And they said, we'll surrender, but we want America out of here. Well, we know how that goes. Doing this show,
Yeah.
we know the
The
cancellation
whole
of
get America out of here never seems to go over well for long.
doesn't work. They wanted the bases out of there. They wanted everything, and the cancellation of the trade parity, any secession in hostility or truces that took place during that time period were only at the top level between government officials and peasant leaders. So again, they were like a peasant army, basically. The fighting on the ground continued largely unabated. So in September 15, 1951, the CIA released an assessment of the strength of the Huck. Based on the assessment, the Huck had reached the peak of strength in 1950. The danger of the Hucks overthrowing the government had receded.
When is the CIA gonna build a fucking vampire, Graham?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Lee Camp.
For the love of God.
So, but this basically took place, the war where America really got involved in trying to defeat the Hucks was between 1950 and 1954. And this is one of the things they do. There's and this is another article, straying away from conventional search and destroy tactics, the CIA thought of an ingenious strategy to add folklore, especially the aswang, to its coterie of propaganda weapons. This is in sort of Filipino, especially in the rural areas, mythology of a vampire-like creature, right? That goes back a long time. So they went, oh, here's what we can do. And since the Hucks were basically peasant fighters, rural fighters, that's where their power base was. And mainly in the provinces.
So we probably rolled into town and we were like, you must surrender to us. We have Jesus on our side. And they were like, who is that? And we were like, okay, we have this vampire creature on our side. And they were like, oh, dear God.
Yeah, I know. And people are like, oh, this crazy tribal people believe in ridiculous stuff like a swang, but we believe in a guy that could turn water into wine and walk on water. And
for some reason, when we told them we had this carpenter on our side, they didn't react. But
yeah,
when we told them we had a vampire.
Yeah. And that vampire thing's nuts, but we believe in immaculate conception. So that makes sense. We're saying, considering the rural nature of the Philippine society in this time,
vampires are ridiculous. This bush told me so. this bush that's on fire told me so.
I don't believe in crazy vampires, but a talking bush that's on fire, if you don't believe in that, I don't know, then you believe in nothing. Then I don't know how you get through the day.
Yeah. You haven't read the real books if you don't believe in that.
You haven't read the rule books. Oh, they have all this crazy mysticism. Our rule book says you can't mix grains.
Our rule book says you can't mix milk and meat. That's
yes.
Because that makes so much more sense.
Oh, those crazy tribal people with all their weird ways. But our book says you can literally sell your teenage daughter into slavery, which is a thing that is said in the Bible. So you can do that, which that apparently isn't savage or crazy. But this
also says you can't wear a cotton wool blend. So, you guys are going to hell because you got that fucking cotton wool shit on.
Well, wool sucks. I mean, let's be honest here. Wool.
Whoa, Graham, you didn't tell me you were going to go this edgy on the show, all right? This is a divider line I don't cross, all right? I do not piss off the Wool Guild.
The Wool Guild. There is a sternly written email being drafted as we speak. Mr. Elwood, sir.
We are so fucked.
On behalf of the Wool Guild, how dare you take on our means of supporting our families in such a derogatory tone?
I've been the president of this guild for 132 years, and this is the most upset I've ever been.
You, sir, it's bad enough you don't eat mutton, but now you've disgraced the...
I can't believe I had to put my teeth back in for this.
My wooden teeth. You know the guy's got wooden teeth. The guy at the wool guild has wooden teeth.
I call it my woods and my wools. I had to put my woods and my wools on just to respond to this travesty.
You know he's gonna link up with the cashew milk people, and this is gonna all hell's gonna break loose.
We're fucked. We're fucked.
We're done.
This is why we have no ads on this show. They know. They know.
Because all of our wool ads would just be being yanked right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I just remember growing up as a kid in Wisconsin and in the winters and having these just itchy, shitty wool sweaters. I hated it, and I don't like it.
And that's been your true vendetta ever since. Been against wool.
Lee, if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything like a goddamn wool sweater.
Well, Graham, you know what's truly terrifying around this season is the werewolves. The werewolves will get you, man. They fucking, it's just wool creatures that come out and they don't bite you. They just rub up against your bare skin.
Yes. With itchy wool skin. That's what they do.
They just hump that soft part of your neck. That's what they do.
Soft part of your neck. And then your neck itches for weeks.
Weeks.
They're monsters, Lee. They're monsters. So anyway, back to the CIA and its werewolvery and vampiring in the Philippines. So considering that, that this is taking place in a rural area, the belief in the aswang was strong, along with other supernatural entities such as the Encanto and the Manuel Egal. I'm sorry, forgive me, I am mispronouncing these words. Given the superstitious nature of Filipinos, some would argue that believing in these creatures continue to this day. Thus, the aswang became a perfect candidate for the CIA to take advantage of. God, it almost sounds crazy, like Jesus is going to protect me from COVID.
Yeah, they continue to this day to believe in fairy tales. What kind of troglodytes are these? Meanwhile, we're like, I can't get COVID when I have a cross necklace on. What are you talking about?
I'm going to paint a Jesus Eagle Trump thing on my trunk. That's not crazy at all. But the CIA's plan, Lee, was simple. A pile of dead bodies, usually deceased Huck fighters, would be left by the side of the road in a busy area of the province. And on those mangled bodies, holes were punctured to resemble animal or aswang bites. The terrible sight convinced anyone who came across it that it was the nighttime monsters of Filipino folklore that committed the atrocious act.
Oh, my God.
And surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly, the plan worked.
Oh my God.
Reports revealed
they were like, these people are so simple that they believe that monsters did put these holes in these people. And meanwhile, they're like, yeah, no, this single bullet put 7 holes through Kennedy.
Unbelievable. I know the single bullet puts went in a circle, defied the laws of physics. And we're all supposed to just believe that. We're all just supposed to.
We believe that whole fairy tale, but we laugh at this vampire hole theory,
right? And we purported this vampire fairy tale so that Coca-Cola could have a bigger profit margin. Like we poked holes in dead bodies to scare simple farmers so that Coca-Cola could have a better leg up.
Well, and I imagine if you look at the demands of the simple peasant farmer brigade, they were probably like, we'd like $1 a day. Like, right. They probably were like, we would like dental work, like it was probably like the most simple requests in the world.
Yeah. Hey, can we own our own land? Like, oh, these goddamn commies again. Like, let's get them scared on vampires. Like,
This guy
The
asked for
demands.
clean water. Let's murder some of his friends and then stab holes in their throats and then pile them in a pyramid out front of his house. Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. Totally reasonable for people that wanted their own land to govern them. This is going to sound weird. They wanted the ability to just govern themselves without an outside country. Boy, where does that sound? That familiarly? Have you ever heard of that before? Is there a place or a time in history where people wanted to throw off the chains of a monarchy so that they could govern themselves? Have you ever heard of something like that?
I don't recall anything like that.
Neither do I. Neither do I. Anyway,
it's mainly people requesting more kings and queens
throughout history.
Throughout history.
Everyone's like, more monarchies.
Yes.
So reports reveal that the townspeople who were once either indifferent or sympathetic to the Huck cause were undoubtedly terrified. The same pattern of holes, animal bites, and carcasses were seen across the countryside in quick succession. To the superstitious, the Huck battleground was a haunted place filled with ghosts and eerie creatures. In his memoir, this man Lansdale recounted how they would kidnap one Huck, puncture his neck with 2 holes, hang his body by the heels, drain him of blood.
Oh, Jesus. It's if I were crazy, I would think that sounds like desecrating a body.
Yeah, that doesn't sound evil or crazy or just like sadistic, barbaric behavior, does it? I mean, this is all, again, so that we just have a government that acquiesces to American corporate interests. So this is what everyone wants. I want everyone who thinks capitalism is great to understand this is what capitalists will do to protect their profits.
Yeah. And we even, I mean, you could argue that it had already happened by that point, but basically between that, back then corporations had a lot of power. Now it's really just melded into one thing. I mean, the corporate America just owns the government, like just is the government. There is no, it's not like they need to take a meeting with the government. They are the government.
Oh yeah. There's no seam anymore. They're just a part of it. And it's now it's like the military works for the corporations. The Congress and the Senate works for the corporations. They're not even like, they're just underlings. I mean,
yeah, no, it's literally as if we were like, hey, from now on, the Senate is just, we take an exec from each corporate, the largest 50, 100 or so corporate entities, and they just send their secretary down here.
I want to show you this, this Edward Lansdale. This is from his journal. So just to give people an idea of what the guy who did this looks like. This is the kind of guy.
This is the guy who did the puncturing, or
this is the guy it was his operation, basically. Oh, why can I not share this? Come on.
Share, Graham. Share like a good communist.
I'm trying to share like a good communist. If the share thing is not working, I don't know why it's not working. All right, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'll just put this guy's, you'll see this on the screen behind me. This is this is the guy who concocted this plan and said in his own memoirs, we punctured holes and hung guys up. Just take a look at this little angel. Look at that little American angel we've got there.
He's got a bit of an SS vibe, I'd say.
just a hair of an SS vibe, just a little SSE.
Just a slight SS-ish.
Just look at that nice little SSE guy. This guy was look, he's got US. He's a US. He's like, it looks like a 2-star general. This was his plan.
So in his memoir, he was just proudly like, so all we did was drain the blood out of the victims, and it was a blast.
Pretty much. He's basically in this thing, and he boasts in his memoir, Lansdale recounted how they would kidnap one Huck, puncture his neck with 2 holes, hang his body by the heels, drain him of blood, and dump the corpse on the trail that other Hucks would pass by. When the Hucks discovered the dead comrade, they promptly pack up and relocate to a different hill.
It's fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
They were like, then we'd of course we'd have sexual relations with the holes in the neck. I mean, that was really just an extra. That was a little perk for the guys, that didn't really help with the mission. It was just we wanted, it was good for morale, really.
Yeah, just got to let the guys blow off steam. Another tactic used by our SS friend Lansdale and his team was the quote eye of God, which would be painted on the wall facing the house of a suspected Huck sympathizer in the dead of night. The mysterious presence of these malevolent eyes the next morning had a sharply sobering effect. They would just paint that on there.
By the way, you can share the slide I have up if you want.
Okay. Hey,
the Oswang.
There it is. Yeah, that's how it's been depicted. Is the CIA used to win the war in the Philippines, and one of the things they would. So that's how the creature has been depicted many different ways. Together with the combination of logistical and factional problems, the Hucks began to lose moral support in the areas they once held. With the psychological operation deemed successful, the search and destroy missions of the Army continued and intensified until Louis Tarrant and the majority of the Hucks laid down their arms in 1954 to accept a pardon. The CIA succeeded in its unconventional psychological Aswang operations, which could be perceived in the precedent to the infamous Project MK Ultra, or the CIA mind control game. So that's another thing we learn on this show. Whenever the CIA tries its first evil thing, it's usually like, well, this was the precursor to an even more evil thing.
Well, that when they finished with this battle in the Philippines, they were like, all right, we're done. And the guy's like, well, I can still poke a few holes in people, right? I still drain some blood, right? We're not just done with the blood draining, right?
Yeah.
Because it was going pretty well. So, let's just not be hasty and throw that whole concept out. Because I feel like we're just learning how to do it well.
Like, look how much we tricked these guys. I wonder how else we can trick people. Hey, and somebody's created LSD and all these other things. It'd be like so many of these CIA operations that we've talked about all fold into each other in one way or another. They're all like connected. Like,
yeah. Well, we're about to get into some FBI operation.
Oh, government secrets. Second segment, FBI theme. Beep, beep, beep.
This is MLK versus the FBI, if you want to add that to your deep voice scenario.
MLK versus the FBI in a knockdown dragout between truth, justice, and a weirdo, J. Edgar Hoover.
So there is a new documentary, newish documentary on, you can get it on Hulu. I think it was made by FX or something. And it's called MLK FBI / FBI. And it goes through a lot of details about the FBI's like ongoing battle against MLK, trying to undermine him, trying to crush him, trying to end his power, his leadership. Mm-hmm. I think I'll get into a little more of this as we go along, but there's a bit of a limited hangout feel, which we've discussed before, a bit of a partial reveal where you are getting a ton of detail about what the FBI was, their surveillance, everything else, what they were doing to MLK. But maybe they're leaving out certain aspects. They certainly don't get into his assassination other than just to be like, oh, he was killed by James Earl Ray. Whoopsie. That's
Which
about
we've
it.
covered on. We did an episode where you went
Yes.
into the huge cover up and the conspiracy surrounding MLK's assassination.
Yes, we did a 2-episode arc, which were episodes 6 and 7. So if you want to hear the truth about MLK's assassination in depth, with a lot of detail that I guarantee you don't know if you haven't really read up on it or listened to those episodes, go back to episodes 6 and 7 of Government Secrets. And spoiler alert, James Earl Ray did not do it. And even MLK's family believes James Earl Ray did not do it. So, but we're not getting into that. We're mainly talking about while he was alive. So they start off, this is perhaps the biggest propaganda of this documentary, but most of it, I'm saying the documentary is very good. So most of it, I'll be talking about what they're revealing is correct. But towards the beginning, you hear this voice go, this time represented the darkest part of the FBI's history. And it's like, I think it's still going. I don't think this was this one little moment where they were shitty. It's not like, oh God, man, am I glad we're past that.
They always talk about the FBI and the CIA like, oh, they did this crazy stuff way back when. Like, what are they doing now? Just selling brownies? Like, what like?
Literally 97% of all terrorists caught in the U.S. were working with the FBI, but didn't know it. FBI informants, FBI infiltrators. So basically, the FBI, it seems to be their main job is creating terrorists and then stopping them.
January 6th. We already know this. The head of the Proud Boys, the head of the the Oath Keepers, both FBI informants.
And Wiggly Poos was the third group that they also were involved in. I made that one up. So
I was like, wow, I've never heard of it. What is that?
I mean, Proud Boy. What are these names anyway? The Guilty Toddlers also was
the Guilty Toddlers
was infiltrated by the FBI.
That is a fantastic band name.
Or apparently far right-wing white supremacist group. But
either way.
So we find out later in this documentary that the voice that is saying this represented the darkest part of FBI's history is James Comey. So So there's a bit of propaganda in this documentary. However, most of what they're talking about and revealing is accurate. And so let's get into some of that. Montgomery, Alabama, the boycott wins in 1956. At that time, the FBI was somewhat interested in MLK, in these protests, these boycotts going around the South, but they kind of viewed them as little local things. They didn't really view it as a national threat, which we'll define that in a bit. But, so MLK was just another black leader that they were like, I don't love that, but okay, right. Whatever. It's, it's black people being surly down there. So they start watching MLK a little bit more closely, but he's not quite a national leader much at that point. So they notice he has a friend and confidant named Stanley Levison. Stanley Levison was a white lawyer, became close to King, was advisor, and the FBI looks into this. In around 1962, they get very interested in this, and they're like, "Well, hold on, why is he friends with a white lawyer? That seems odd." And they're like, "Well, I'm sure the white lawyer's on the up and up." And then they were like, "Wait a second. Is he Jewish?" And they were like, he's a Jew. So they were like, this Jew's got to be up to no good. So Levison had been involved in the Communist Party and communist politics. And it's funny, like growing up the way I did, you hear that and you're like, if you haven't educated yourself further, so like even going into college, when I heard like someone had been in the Communist Party, I literally thought it meant like they were in a party of individuals whose goal was to like assassinate American political leaders
Right.
and like
Yeah.
just like the worst human beings. When in fact, communism at the time, I mean, granted, there was tons of propaganda against it, but for those who were a part of the American Communist Party, it was like, I believe that workers should be running the show rather than a tiny number of incredibly rich individuals. Like, that was why they got involved in the Communist Party, not because they were like, we need to kill everybody and just have chaos. Like,
that's what we were all fed. We were
right.
all fed that, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And, and then when the wall fell, they ran out of enemies, and we got a new one after 9/11. But like, we were all fed that. When someone was like, oh, so-and-so was I remember I really liked the band The Clash when I was like, 12, 13, 14. And I was in high school, and someone was like, oh yeah, there's an album, their album Sandinista or whatever, they're communists. And I was like, oh no, like The Clash is going to want to murder Americans and eat babies or whatever,
The
and
Clash
it's like,
supports terrorism and harming people.
yes, they just want to blow up America. That's all these commies are going to do. And I remember seeing like a May Day parade, and I was like, how are we letting them on our streets? And I was just fed all of this.
It's like a pipe fitter, and you're like, why are they here?
Yeah. A guy just wanting a livable wage, and free healthcare. Get these monsters off of our streets.
So to the ruling elite at that time, being like communism or socialism, it was like being that was equivalent to having Ebola. Like, and that was the propaganda they fed us too. It was like one person has it, and if they interact with you, then your organs just start pouring out of your anus. Like, that was like, you know, a communist? Oh my God. How are you not vomiting out your gallbladder right now? Yeah.
It's communism. Well, again, that's how they would do it. Those like, communism is a virus. It's a disease that spreads. I mean, I remember watching all of those old movies and propaganda, black and white, films were always like that.
Right. And there was a lot of combining that with black solidarity or black, power. And I don't even just mean the Black Panthers who said actual black power, but just power in any way, political power, anything. So black solidarity groups, all of those were accused of being communist. Like, there were maps that they would show, and it would show like a large swath covered in like black color, and it would say like the Black Communist South. And it was just it was meant to tell white America like, oh, they're here and they're taking over and they fucking hate you. Like,
and again, that tactic is still being used today of like, hey, white America, the angry blacks are coming. They'll make them Black Lives Matter, or, today back then, black communists or whatever, Black Panthers, like, stay in the white suburbs because the blacks are coming. That was always the scare tactic. Still being used.
So they legitimately believed that this guy's a communist, which he had stopped working with the Communist Party. And this is around the same time as the, House Un-American Activities Committee, where they would drag people in. Have you been, or how are you now, or how you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And it was equivalent to saying, are you now, or have you ever eaten a living human? Like, it was like the most horrific.
And it decimated like all these industries, especially Hollywood. It broke and ended friendships. Some people committed suicide. I mean, it was just brutal what they did. I mean, when you got blackballed in Hollywood during that House Un-American Activities Committee, you were done, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you were done. You could not work. That was it.
Yeah. There's a great movie about Trumbo that I think was titled Trumbo.
Yes, with Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. Great movie on him. And, he wrote some Hollywood's classics and everything, but he had to write under a fake name. Even though he was such a huge, already established part of Hollywood, he had to go to writing under a fake name because they and he was a communist, but he believed in workers running the show.
He also served in World War II, and John Wayne didn't.
Right. Good point. But so anyway, Levinson had distanced himself from the Communist Party, but that didn't matter. They still, once communist, always a communist, right? Once you're infected with Ebola, you're always infected with Ebola. So
rather be dead than red.
So Levinson was close with MLK, and J. Edgar Hoover, believed this great communist menace, and he was the head of the FBI. We haven't really talked about him enough. I mean, he pops up all the time, but head of the FBI for 48 years, like a half a century. This guy ran the fucking most powerful domestic spy agency until 1972. I didn't even realize he was that close to when I was on this planet. He was still around. And he viewed himself as defending U.S. society, but you got to understand that to the ruling elite, which are all ruling white males, I mean, they are rich white males completely. There is not a soul that is of this ruling elite that is not a rich white male at that time. Defending U.S. society meant defending the class hierarchy, the gender hierarchy. Men run things, women fucking do not. The race hierarchy, obviously. And and the class hierarchy, I already said. It was like the rich white men are staying on top, and anybody who spoke out for equality, for evening out to some degree those dynamics, was viewed as radical, was viewed as totally fucking outside what was allowable discussion in American politics, on American media. And, we could do a government secrets on various women who stood up, or various black people who stood up, or various poor people who stood up. And they were called radicals. They were called communists. Some of them were locked up, put in jail, like Eugene Debs. So MLK, as he's gaining power, is of course viewed as very radical, communist sympathizer. So even though at the time, ultimately MLK does speak out against capitalism, but at the time he was not. At the time, for many years of his leadership, he did not say the word capitalism, and he very much stuck to equality for, the black race, but those who are poor, like the poor and downtrodden. He wasn't really making it about capitalism. He did ultimately. He's got some epic quotes about capitalism, but that wasn't the earlier years.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally just about equality. I mean, equity. I mean, he was really, the Poor People's Campaign. And he said, why are we spending all this money on the Vietnam War when we're not helping people here? I mean, this is, and as you stated, J. Edgar Hoover's job was to protect the white colonialist tradition of America, and protecting its power and its land and everything like that. And this, I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, we talked about Fred Hampton, it's similar thing. And anytime you start unifying people, we talked about this when we've discussed on several occasions, how the FBI was involved in the MLK or Malcolm X assassination and NYPD. Anytime you start uniting people, I mean, and getting people to wake up to how we're all lied to, like America is one big lie and capitalism is a lie. And once you start waking people up to that, man, they don't like you. They don't want you around, and they'll do whatever they got to do.
And I'm going to get into the moment where the full American system decided to go against MLK. Because for a while, it was kind of specifically Hoover and the FBI that really hated MLK. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the rest of the ruling elite. And they might have disliked him, but they were willing to work with him. So one thing that was scary to them is King, as he was having these wins in Birmingham, Alabama, and other places, he literally was saying it was only the beginning. He wasn't saying we won here and we're done. And that scared the fuck out of them because they were like, "What? You know, what's he mean? It's only the beginning. You had your win. You know, in this one city. You stick to a couple of southern cities and leave it at that." So King's, as this is going on, King's constantly having to deny he's a communist or a sympathizer. But he started keeping it quiet, but he secretly refused to sever ties with Levison. He continued that friendship, even though he told JFK and RFK that because they pulled him aside and basically, because they were working fairly closely with him, with MLK, willing to work. And they pulled him aside and said, "You have to sever ties with this guy. We found out he's connected to the Communist Party." So the FBI begins wiretapping Levison, but doesn't find anything connected to communism, which is what they wanted. They wanted to show that he's spouting communist literature, that he's speaking to other known communists. They don't find any of that. So they wiretap other members of MLK's group. I think much of this was, I mean, here's the thing, is the FBI has been breaking the law on every level for so long, which nowadays people don't even find it like interesting when you say the FBI was breaking the law. But at the beginning of this, it's like, it's not even approved by the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, but which makes it illegal because he has to approve it. So at the beginning, it's, you know, completely illegal wiretaps. And Hoover in an interview says like, "Oh no, we have like only a few wiretaps going around the country, and we only do them against people who are actively committing treason," which is hilarious. You know, it's done against anybody who's viewed as radical, you know, which I just went through who's viewed as radical. Anybody who says, "Hey, maybe the dames should get a chance to speak out loud," you know, then they wiretap that guy's phone.
I love the idea that like, hey, there shouldn't be poverty in the richest country in the world. Treason. That's treason. Like, string them up.
They're like, you know, maybe this guy shouldn't have to eat dog food for dinner. And they were like, listen, let's get on that guy. Let's find out what he's up to, who he's speaking to.
Yep. It's what is considered treason in this country is hysterically ridiculous.
So through all these wiretaps, they never find any communist activity, which is what they were dying to find.
What?
Instead, what they stumble upon is that Martin Luther King is having non-monogamous relationships. He's having affairs, which, let's remember, probably everybody in the entire JFK was certainly having affairs. Probably everybody in the fucking White House going back generations was having affairs. I mean, it's like all these FBI guys. We know that, and there's nothing wrong with being gay, but we know that Hoover was having these clandestine gay things and that he was also using the fact that other people were secretly gay against them while he's doing that. So he's basically going to gay people in power and saying, "Listen, we know, and we'll reveal it if you don't do what we want." Meanwhile, he's secretly gay. So
yeah, that's the issue. We've talked about this before. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but the fact that he's going to be this moral arbitrator of like, oh my God, you know, MLK is having affairs outside of marriage, and he's having all of this secret sex, whatever. I mean, if you're doing all this secret stuff, whatever, it's gay, straight, whatever, and then you're blackmailing people and you're taking the moral high ground, and, you know, Hoover is, you know, he's gone after gay people, as you said. I mean, and publicly, he's got all these quotes of saying, "Oh, it's a moral outrage. Homosexuality is part of communism," or whatever. And then here he is.
Well, it is required when you join the Communist Party. You do have to blow a guy. So, yeah.
But it's blowing for the people. So yeah, it's just so typical of these. And it's throughout. I learned this at a young age. Anytime I see somebody that's like on the moral high ground, you know they're doing some creepy shit behind doors. You know it. Like anyone that's like holier than thou, these religious people. I mean, dude, as we've discussed, I was raised Catholic, so the Catholic man, they're all anyone that's like has that stance of they're better than you, or they're more moral or than you, you know, they are doing something. They're fucking a cat or something. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something weird to somebody.
Dude, how many cats have to suffer so we can have this fucking holy righteous bullshit?
I know. It's just like they're all I just anytime somebody takes that stance, I'm just like, what do you got in your what skeletons you got in your closet? What are you doing?
Yeah. What was his name? Was it Craig Murray? The congressman who was in charge of like the child protective fucking bill, and he was like having sex with 16-year-olds or 16-year-old boys and like pressuring them and everything. And it's like, yeah, of course he chose to be the head of that fucking push, that holier than thou push, and of course he's secretly having sex with kids. Anyway, that aside, Robert Kennedy is he eventually authorizes the wiretapping of MLK. And I mean, you know, RFK ultimately became a crusader, I believe, for equality and justice and things like that. It doesn't mean every fucking choice and thing he stood for at the beginning of his career and at various points was correct. Like, the great thing about some of these people is they do evolve. Now, most of the most horrific, like a Hoover or a Kissinger, don't evolve at all. It's usually the partially good guys evolve to be better. So, yeah, it's not like RFK approving this wiretap because MLK might have spoken to a communist is pretty shitty. But RFK evolves and becomes far better than he was, I believe. So
and they killed him for it.
Yeah, and they took him out for it. Yeah. So Robert Kennedy eventually authorizes the wiretapping of MLK. He's pressured to do so. He's told King is working with communists, etc. The FBI knows they're mainly just trying secretly. So they tell RFK, we need to do it because he's working with communists. Secretly, they knew the reason they wanted the wiretaps was to find more evidence of King having sex with, you know, people who aren't his wife, women who aren't his wife, and because they wanted to use that to try and crush him. They knew that the communist thing was garbage. And so they start bugging, not just the telephones, but they start leaving bugs in the hotel rooms that they know he's going to be staying in, because they would go to they would know which hotel he's going to. They would go to the front, you know, the people that run it, the managers, and they would say, you know, we have warrants, and they would find out which room, or they would tell them which room to put King in, and they would put bugs throughout the room. So they're tracking every bit of his life. And to some degree, King refused at first to believe this was true. He ultimately fully understood it. But at first, others were trying to tell him that the phones might be tapped and that that they're listening to us and stuff. And he would say, the FBI has more important things to do than listen to us. But of course, the FBI had nothing more important to do than make sure black people are not rising up. That was their main mission.
God forbid the FBI ever goes after like evil corporate criminals or, you know, the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world. Like, God forbid they do that. No, They got to go after activists and people that want to help the poor and give people equal rights. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the amount of, you know, mafia shit and killings and rape and all kinds of shit that's going on in Hollywood and by the church, etc. FBI had no interest in any of that for a long time. RFK did ultimately go after the mafia, but certainly didn't give a shit about the church.
No.
Anyway, the March on Washington, the one where he gives the "I Have a Dream" speech. It was August 1963. It was terrifying to the FBI and to many in the ruling elite, because it took a Black Southern movement and turned it into a national movement for civil rights. And William Sullivan, who was the second at the FBI below Hoover, he sends a memo the day after that march that says that Martin Luther King is, quote, the most dangerous Negro in the future of this nation, unquote. And we have to use every resource at our disposal to destroy him. So that's where the FBI's mind is in 1963. 1963, also JFK is killed. President Johnson comes into power. Now, at this point, people need to understand that Johnson saw the writing on the wall, realized that his votes were reliant on black people, etc., and just knew that, like, corporate America, along with the ruling elite, realized that civil rights was going to happen, and they needed to work with that power rather than continue to try and fight it. So Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act into law. And also, I think the Democrats were like, this will secure us elections for years to come if we have the entire black vote. So King wins the Nobel Prize, and King and Johnson are at this time working together. So basically, it's like FBI and Hoover despise MLK, but Johnson and some in the government view King as someone they can work with.
Okay.
So 1964, and King also is carefully avoiding a public spat with Hoover. He doesn't want it to become a full-on him versus the FBI thing. But in 1964, Hoover makes a speech saying MLK is the world's most notorious liar. King then begins criticizing Hoover slightly and criticizing the failure to reinforce the Civil Rights Act. Because here's the thing. You can pass a law saying everybody's equal. The next step is reinforcing or making sure that everyone is equal, which came down to the FBI, who did not give a fuck to make people equal, to make sure people were equal, and to go after people who were violating the Civil Rights Act.
It's not even, it's more than just they didn't care about people being equal. They were like, no, we're not going to protect these rich white guys. Like that's our goal. Like, so anything that gets in the way of these white guys having power, we're taking them out.
Yeah. So a lot of people, I think, look back in our history and they go, well, Civil Rights Act, then, there was equality. Sure, there's still systemic racism, but basically there was equality after the Civil Rights. It's like bullshit. It's like that act was passed, and then there was a slow trudge uphill through mud of trying to have any kind of equality. Mm-hmm. And during this spat between Hoover and King, people have to remember King now is kind of worshipped, and even our ruling elite, even our white ruling elite, even our Republican ruling elite go, oh, MLK, how great was he? But at the time, and of course, many of them are full of shit, but I'm just saying, at the time, a poll of Americans showed that in this back and forth between Hoover and King, 50% believed Hoover and 15% believed King. And the rest said they didn't know what was going on. Wow. So far more of America thought Hoover, FBI, great guys, wonderful human beings trying to save America. This MLK guy, he seems to be causing a stink. He seems to be causing a bit of a razzmatazz that's upsetting to many in our great country.
A razzmatazz? I don't know that I've ever heard that term used before, committing a razzmatazz.
Oh man, you got to look up razzmatazz. It's one of the best. It usually means festivities. So
I know it's used in festivities, but I've never heard it used in this context of this guy's causing a razzmatazz.
Well, Graham, you got to get out more. I mean, it's all the rage with the kids these days.
I really do. I'm not razzmatazzing enough. It sounds like I need more razzmatization in my life.
Oh, absolutely. If you haven't been razzmatized, then you gotta. There's a whole ceremony. I mean, they put you through a thing. Don't worry, it's not like the ceremony to get in the communists. You don't have to blow anyone. So.
It just feels like it'd be weird. Something's getting put in me that I don't want in a razzmatization.
Mainly raspberries. So behind the scenes, the FBI begins distributing stuff about MLK's affairs to like churches and media outlets. They're trying to, they want the stories to be done about how MLK is having affairs, but no one's willing to do it. I think that much of the country, and I don't know specifically which outlets they went to or whatever, but part of it might have been that the FBI didn't want it connected to them, so they're sending anonymous stuff to these outlets to try and get it out there, and the outlets are probably like, "Where did this come from?" But then on top of that, it's like a lot of the outlets probably thought, "Well, we cover up all the affairs of every other politician. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should also take a bullet for this one too." Like, it was so common back then for them to cover up all of the affairs of every ruling person, every person in any kind of level of power, that maybe they were just like, "Oh yeah, we generally ignore this stuff."
Yeah. Everybody's having sex with everybody. We just usually just don't talk about it. We always just get covered up. I mean, Kennedy was, Johnson was, I mean, everybody was.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were just like, "Oh yeah, this is just a thing we do, right?" I mean, probably most of the editor-in-chiefs of the newspapers were like, affairs aren't really a bad thing. I think sometimes it clears the head. So the FBI mails a tape. This is when they're getting frustrated. They mail a tape of MLK, an audio tape, having sex with other women, to his home address. It's anonymous, with an anonymous note that was actually written by Sullivan, the number 2 at the FBI. And the note basically recommends, it's to King, and it says, "Oh, I can't," it pretends to be a fan of King, a former fan of King's. And it says, "I can't believe how horrific you are. What a hypocrite you are. You're a monster, and you need to do the right thing." And it basically suggests he kill himself.
Wow.
So the FBI mails this to his home address saying, "You really should kill yourself to save your dignity." So Coretta Scott King receives the package. She doesn't really know what it is. She knows it's audio tapes of someone having sex, but I think she thinks it may be fake and not her husband. Right. The other thing is, marriage is a crazy fucking situation. So it's like, maybe they had an agreement, maybe they understood each other. Who the fuck knows what they had going on? Who knows what their agreement was? But
marriage is a crazy situation. That's just what.
Well, I've done whole segments on how insane marriage is. So
I know, but
most of marriage boils down to religion. But anyway,
because you're not married, you guys had some kind of druid ceremony on Easter Island or whatever, right? Like you guys
Druish on Easter Island. Yeah. It was with the Moai, and we haven't opened a relationship with Moai. You can hump any of those big-headed statues.
Just a Moai, just free sex party. I dig it. I'm down.
Many of them are tipped over. You know how that happened. I don't need to get into the details.
You know what I'm talking about.
Anyway, so it doesn't quite achieve what the FBI wanted. Like, he doesn't kill himself, and it doesn't go to the press. However, it does have a really draining result on Martin Luther King. He's clearly nervous for the rest of his years that this is going to become some public thing, and they're going to try and crush him. So he has, I don't know about a breakdown, but a lot of emotional trauma, and he's very worried that like his sex life is going to be all over the newspapers at any minute. So like I said, and don't worry, we're working towards the end here. But like I said, he had a kind of working relationship with the Johnson White House, but then he does he crosses the red line. He criticizes Vietnam. But he's beaten down. The moment he criticizes Vietnam, He is so beaten down in all the newspapers. I'm sure Johnson probably gave him a personal call.
Right.
He is so beaten down that he backs off and doesn't mention Vietnam for another 18 months. Another year and a half, he doesn't say shit about Vietnam.
Wow.
Because, and it's like one of those things where you kind of understand where he's coming from. He has achieved massive gains for the Black people of America.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it seems like that's all going to be crushed. All of his work's going to be crushed because he's coming out against this war that is overseas, that he's not facing day to day.
Right.
And so there's an understandable aspect of that. Now, the other side of it, which he ultimately would agree with, or would have agreed with, is that morally, it doesn't matter what the ramifications would be. Morally, I can't sit there and watch this and not say anything. That's the other side of the argument. And eventually, 18 months later, he finally decides that's what it needs to be, that morally he can't sit back any longer. Ramparts magazine, which the legendary journalist Robert Scheer was an editor of and wrote a lot for. And I now write for Scheer Post, which he continues, scheerpost.com, Ramparts magazine. And it was, I think some of the reporting or some of the photos or something were, maybe all the reporting was done by, what was his first name? His name is Dr. Pepper. Can't remember his first name, but he wrote the book. He's written many books on the assassination of MLK, and we quote from him a lot in those episodes back, episode 6 and 7, where we cover the MLK assassination. And he became good friends with MLK for that year after MLK reads this Ramparts magazine article about the effect of napalm on Vietnamese children, and he decides he can't stay quiet anymore. He sees the photos of what we're doing, the horrors of Vietnam. And once he does that, the fucking alliance with the Johnson administration is over, and he becomes the most hated person by the American ruling elite, the American media. No longer is there, this some of the media was on King's side through a lot of this, but coming out against Vietnam and saying it was morally repulsive was the end. So, and throughout all of this, the COINTELPRO system is going on where they're infiltrating his organizations. He had a man that was sat a few feet from him in his offices named James Harrison, who was a paid informant for COINTELPRO and the FBI for years. So they had infiltrated these organizations, and they also, COINTELPRO was also about upsetting these organizations, causing disputes, causing problems. It wasn't just about relaying information. It was how much strife can we cause in these organizations, like the Black Panthers, Malcolm X, etc.
Which they're clearly still doing today in the left. I mean, I mean, since you watch Forced to Vote, you watch any of these things like that, even the COVID, and they're just keeping everybody on the left fighting and with each other, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. So,
yeah, they are still to this day infiltrating all these organizations, doing their best. It doesn't mean every person who has a qualm or an issue in an organization is an infiltrator, but there are plenty, and they are doing their damnedest to just. And they nowadays it's easy to use the politics of race. It's easy to use politics of gender to just sideline all of it as much as possible. So, that still goes on. And anyway, and just in terms of how close these people are, we also covered in the assassination of Malcolm X, literally his head of security, who gave him CPR after he was shot, was, I believe, NYPD, I believe, or police. He was connected to police, but and many of them were upset with him for trying to give mouth to mouth to Malcolm X after he was shot. But that's how close these people were. They were on the inside. So MLK
Wow.
begins planning the Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C. in 1968, which, again, you were talking about unifying. This would take MLK's message, and he'd been doing this for a while, so it wasn't the first time, but take MLK's message of racial equality and make it about more about class equality. Take,
Right.
combine black and white people into, we are the poor of this country. It's a rich country. There shouldn't be any poor. And that unity was, again, terrifying to them.
Well, he started on that unity. Bobby Kennedy started on that unity, and wacky coincidence, they were assassinated 2 months apart from each other.
Yep. So during this time, Sullivan, the number 2 at the FBI, begins adding handwritten notes to the MLK files. So many of these files have been revealed. So you can read about Martin Luther King having an affair, such and such or whatever. And Sullivan starts adding in notes later that say like, oh yeah, and there was an orgy where they raped a girl and MLK watched. Martin Luther King watched on and laughed. And it's like, so let me get this straight. Years or months after there was actually surveillance of any of this, you just remembered that there was a rape and that he laughed.
Yeah.
Like it's just utter garbage. And you can see these handwritten notes in the documents. So King, coming out against the Vietnam War, coming out against capitalism, saying capitalism was, the root of much of the harm for people in the country. That's kind of the break from much of the ruling elite. And he's assassinated that year, which he's killed in Memphis. We did, like I said, 2 episodes, episode 6 and 7. He was not killed by James Earl Ray. There's a ridiculous abundance of evidence and statements and everything else about how he was. Sorry, William Pepper. There it is. Thank you, Kate. Dr. William Pepper. Well, he wrote The Act of State, but then he also wrote other books, which came after. I think maybe it was called The Plot to Kill King. So people should definitely make sure they get his most recent copy, because that's the one where he actually figures out which Memphis police officer pulled the trigger, because for a long time he didn't actually know which police officer had pulled the trigger. And I'll just remind people that there was only one trial ever in the death of Martin Luther King. It was in 1999, and the jury found that it was not James Earl Ray that killed Martin Luther King. It was a man named Lloyd Jowers, combined with components of state and federal agencies. And Jowers did not pull the trigger, but he disposed of the gun in his grill. He owned a grill, bar and grill, that was right there, that looked straight out at the balcony. And he basically grabbed the gun after the shooter fired and disposed of it. And there was a witness to that, a waitress. Anyway, that's about the end of it. The tapes that the FBI made of Martin Luther King are held in the National Archives, and they could be released or revealed in 2027. Now, many are saying that, listening to MLK have sex isn't really going to add a lot to this conversation of incredible abuse by our government, but that's where it stands.
Well, you think the trial in 99 would have been like, that would have been the tipping point of like, nope, we got to do something about this, but it's just all this after the fact, or, they make a statement and we're going to.
I know the New York Times did cover the trial in one tiny paragraph in section D7. You can read one paragraph about how a jury found that Jowers, along with government agencies, killed Martin Luther King. And then I think they say something like, but, the government didn't really put up a defense, so it doesn't really count.
It's just, yeah, it kind of shows that the government targeted a peace activist and had him killed. But I don't know. It's a little murky.
They were busy that day. They were busy framing other people, so they didn't just have time to go to court. And
they just got so much stuff they got to do, taking away all of the activists and black leaders in America and anybody who was against the war and anybody who wanted to unify Americans along class lines. Yeah, they had to get rid of all of them. They were busy with that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of paperwork involved in that.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many fucking groups of white supremacists you have to show up to before you can finally get your informant to talk one of them into kidnapping and killing a governor. It's like a fucking we've been to 37 meetings this week. Just white supremacists talking about how all black people should die, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, why don't we bomb some people? And they're like, nah. Like, they're just so lazy. So it takes a lot of effort.
It takes a village, Lee.
It takes a village to frame people for terrorist acts.
God. Well, that's actually kind of true. So I feel like that's the episode.
I think we did it. Although I will say, I think segment 2 was more of a horror show than segment 1.
Segment 1.
Even though that was the Halloween episode.
Yeah, oh God, it's so funny. As awful as segment 1 is, it just seems kind of light and fluffy compared to the second segment. Like there's always like the wacky segment that's like, oh, they did all these awful things, but it was so nuts. And then there's one that's like, yeah, it's really deep how awful everything is. So Government Secrets, episode 60, Halloween episode.
But seriously, get that HVAC unit we were talking about in Boston. You should really pick that up because that is a solid cooling system.
Yep. I'm going to get that HVAC system. It's going to be pretty awesome. Well, dude, where can people follow and watch everything you're doing?
So if you want to get all my stuff, you should check out radindiemedia.com. It has a ton of people, a ton of left-wing content there. Radindiemedia.com, like radical. But my website is leecamp.com. My Twitter is @leecamp. And there's a new episode of Redacted tonight that comes out tonight.
Sweet. All right, buddy. I guess we'll do this again. And we're going to, we're close to, we're 40 episodes away from the big 100.
Just 1 year away from 100.
Just one. About 10 months. Something like that. I'm
pretty happy with 60. Pretty happy.
60 is pretty awesome. This is a big supersized episode, Ep 60. So yeah, check out everything I'm doing. Go to GrahamElwood.com. We will be having another show in LA, November 27th, that Ron and I are going to do. We're going to have ticket links up for that soon. But no other live dates other than that, really. Follow and do all that other stuff and go to rockfin.com and subscribe there because you get my bonus content, Lee's bonus content, Jimmy, Whitney Webb, all these other people that are on. So check that out. All right, buddy. Good to see you, man. We'll see you next week.